Hello, my name is Leo. I'm a curious little guy who likes to ask a lot of questions. And I also have a habit of finding things that don't belong. One day in the attic of my house, I found an old backpack. It was brown and worn out and smelled like mothballs. But when I opened it, I saw that it was full of gadgets and gizmos. There were flashing lights and buttons everywhere. And then I saw something strange, a note written on a piece of paper that said, "To activate the chronosuit, place the temporal key into the chronosubilizing device." I thought it sounded important, so I put the key into the device, and suddenly the backpack started to glow. The next thing I knew, we were falling through a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. It was amazing. When we landed, I looked around. We had traveled back in time to ancient Egypt. I remember thinking, wow, this backpack is amazing. It can take me anywhere in time. But then I quickly realized that I didn't know how to get back home. And I heard some people coming. I hid behind a pyramid and peeked out from behind it. I saw a group of Egyptians walking by. They were all wearing funny white wigs and carrying golden staffs. One of them even had a pet monkey on a leash. I thought it would be fun to scare them. So I jumped out from behind the pyramid and yelled, "Boo!" They all screamed and dropped their staffs. Then they started to chase me, thinking that I was a monster. I ran as fast as I could, but I couldn't get away from them. They were almost on top of me, and then I slipped on some sand and fell to the ground. I closed my eyes tight, waiting for them to catch me, but nobody came. When I opened my eyes, I saw that one of the Egyptians had pulled me out of the sand and was helping me to dust myself off. He looked at me with a kind smile and asked if I was okay. I nodded, and he helped me up. I realized that maybe I had been too mean to the Egyptians and wanted to apologize. So I did my best to say, "I'm sorry." In Egyptian, they all laughed and told me not to worry. They understood that I was just a lost traveler and wanted to help me. One of the ladies even gave me a drink of water from her canteen. I felt bad because I knew that I did unbelong here and that I had to go back to my own time. So I thanked them for their kindness and told them that I had to go. They all waved goodbye as I walked away, and I felt grateful for their generosity. The rest of my day was spent wandering around ancient Egypt. I marveled at the massive pyramids and tried to blend in with the locals. I even rode on a camel for a while, but it kept spitting, so I got off and continued on foot. As the sun began to set, I realized that I still hadn't figured out how to get home. I missed my family and my bed, and I was starting to feel scared. Suddenly, I remembered the backpack. Maybe there was something inside that could help me. I ran family and searched through the compartments until I found a small device that looked like a compass. I pressed a button and it started to glow. I followed its direction and walked for a while until I saw a shimmering light in the distance. I walked towards it and soon realized that it was the swirling vortex from earlier. It was a time portal, and I knew that if I stepped inside, I would be taken home. I hesitated for a moment, but then I took a deep breath and jumped into the unknown. When I landed, I looked around. I was back in my attic, and the backpack was sitting on the floor beside me. I carefully opened it and saw that the key was missing. I realized that the time-traveling backpack had brought me on an incredible adventure, but now it was time to go back to the present. I zipped up the backpack and carried it downstairs. I still think about my time-traveling backpack sometimes. It taught me that no matter where you are or when you are, it's always important to be kind to others. Even though the Egyptians didn't understand why I had fallen from the sky, they still welcomed me and treated me with respect. I also learned that sometimes the greatest adventures come from the most unexpected places. You never know what you might find in your attic, so it's always worth taking a closer look. And now for some fun facts about ancient Egypt. Did you know that ancient Egyptians kept pet monkeys? They would buy them from merchants who would travel from faraway lands to sell their wares. The monkeys would be trained to do tricks and would often be seen playing with the pharaoh's children. These little guys were more than just pets, though. They were also considered sacred animals because they were believed to be the reincarnation of Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic. Some of the most famous examples of ancient Egyptian art depict monkeys performing various tasks, such as playing musical instruments or acting as servants. This artwork shows just how important these little guys were to the culture of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian society was highly The pharaoh was at the top of the social hierarchy, followed by nobles, priests, scribes, artisans, and farmers. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the slaves. Slaves were typically captured during war or purchased from merchants and could be owned by anyone. Slaves were considered property and had no rights. They were forced to work long hours for little or no pay and were often treated harshly by their owners. Despite their low social status, slaves were still part of ancient Egyptian society, and their contributions should not be overlooked. Many of the great works of ancient Egypt, such as the pyramids and temples, would not have been possible without the labor of slaves. Ancient Egyptian religion was polytheistic. The Egyptians believed that the world was full of gods and goddesses who controlled every aspect of nature. The Egyptians worshipped many different deities, including Ra, the sun god, Osiris, the god of the dead, and Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the afterlife. Religion played an important role in ancient Egyptian life. People would make offerings to the gods and goddesses in the hopes of winning their favor. Priests would perform rituals and ceremonies to keep the gods happy and to ensure that everything in the world stayed in balance. Ancient Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife were some of the most complex and fascinating of any civilization. They believed that after a person died, their soul would go on a journey through the underworld. This soul would have to pass through a series of trials and face many obstacles along the way. If the soul was able to make it through the underworld, it would be rewarded with a place in the field of reeds, a paradise where the righteous dead could live for eternity. The Nile River was central to ancient Egyptian life. The river provided water for crops, transportation, and drinking. The annual flooding of the Nile was also essential for fertilizing the soil and making it ready for planting. In fact, ancient Egyptians kept records of the Nile's flooding so that they could plan their planting schedule accordingly. The Nile was also an important source of food. Fish from the Nile were an important protein source for the ancient Egyptians. They would eat the fish either cooked or pickled, and they would also use the fish oil for cooking other foods. The Nile River was also home to many other animals, such as crocodiles and hippos, which were also sources of food for the ancient Egyptians. And finally, for the ancient Egyptians, writing was a sacred profession. Scribes were highly respected in ancient Egyptian society because they were responsible for recording important information, such as tax revenue and keeping track of the pharaoh's genealogy. To become a scribe, a person had to undergo years of training and pass a series of exams. Only those who were deemed worthy would be allowed to practice the art of writing. Scribes would use a reed pen to write on papyrus made from the papyrus plant, which grew abundantly along the Nile River. They would write in hieroglyphic script, which used pictures of objects to represent words or ideas. Scribes were employed throughout ancient Egypt, not just in the royal court. Many scribes worked for temples or private individuals and were responsible for keeping records of their activities. Scribes were also needed to record the transactions of merchants and traders, as well as to keep track of the goods that were imported and exported. The work of scribes was essential to the functioning of ancient Egyptian society, and they were highly valued members of the community. Thank you for watching my story about Leo's time-traveling backpack. If you liked it, please give us a like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our future videos. Until then, I wish you all the best, and goodbye.